Good evening. Tonight, we bring you a story that will be remembered for generations, a story that has already begun to reshape the destiny of an entire nation. In the heart of South America, Venezuela has witnessed a dramatic turn of events that few could have predicted just months ago. On January 3, 2026, as the first light crept over Caracas, a meticulously planned pre-dawn military operation unfolded. Elite units, moving with precision and determination, swept through the city's streets. Their target: Nicolás Maduro, the man who had ruled Venezuela with an iron grip for over a decade. The operation was swift, catching many by surprise, and within hours, Maduro's reign had come to an abrupt end. Alongside his wife, Celia Flores, Maduro was apprehended and swiftly transferred into U.S. custody. The news broke like a thunderclap, sending shockwaves not only through the corridors of power in Caracas, but also across the globe. Journalists scrambled to report the unfolding drama, while citizens gathered outside government buildings, trying to make sense of the seismic shift. For millions of Venezuelans, Maduro's capture marks a pivotal turning point. The country has endured years of hardship, political repression, economic collapse, and a humanitarian crisis that forced families to make impossible choices. Protests have filled the streets for years, with citizens demanding change and risking everything for a better future. Under Maduro's presidency, Venezuela became synonymous with authoritarian rule and economic disaster. Hyperinflation, food shortages, and widespread poverty drove more than 7 million people to flee their homeland, seeking safety and opportunity elsewhere. Entire neighborhoods were left deserted, and the once vibrant towns now stand as haunting reminders of a nation in crisis. The operation that led to Maduro's arrest was not an isolated event. It was the culmination of years of mounting international pressure, covert negotiations, and coordinated efforts among global powers determined to restore democracy to Venezuela. Behind the scenes, diplomats and intelligence agencies worked tirelessly, while the Venezuelan armed forces prepared for the decisive moment. Now, with Maduro removed from power, Venezuela stands at a crossroads. The air is thick with both uncertainty and hope. Families gather in the streets, daring to dream of a future free from fear and oppression. As the sun rises over Caracas, the promise of a new beginning feels closer than ever before. The world is watching closely, waiting to see if this historic moment will truly mark the start of a new chapter for the Venezuelan people. Will democracy take root, or will old divisions resurface? For now, Venezuela stands on the threshold of change, and the hopes of millions rest on what comes next. News of Maduro's capture spread rapidly across Venezuela. In Caracas, disbelief turned to celebration as people filled the streets, waving flags and embracing in relief. Years of hardship, food shortages, hyperinflation, and failing public services made this moment feel like the end of a nightmare. Yet beneath the joy, uncertainty lingers. Maduro's allies still hold key positions in the military and government, creating a volatile situation. Citizens wonder, who is in charge now? Will the military support a peaceful transition? Past disappointments have bred caution even among the hopeful. The transition to stability will require patience and unity. The celebrations mark a beginning, but Venezuela's future remains unwritten. To truly understand Venezuela's economic collapse, we need to look beyond headlines and examine the complex web of international sanctions that have shaped the country's recent history. Venezuela, once one of South America's wealthiest nations, has faced a dramatic decline over the past decade, and sanctions have played a pivotal role in this story. Sanctions are penalties or restrictions imposed by countries or international bodies, often to influence political change. In Venezuela's case, the United States, the European Union, and several other nations imposed a series of increasingly tough sanctions, aiming to pressure President Nicolás Maduro's government to restore democracy and respect human rights. These sanctions targeted Venezuela's most important industry, oil. The state oil company, PDVSA, was cut off from international markets, making it nearly impossible for Venezuela to sell its oil abroad or access much-needed revenue. Financial sanctions also locked the country out of global banking systems, freezing assets and blocking transactions. The result was devastating. With oil exports crippled and foreign currency scarce, Venezuela struggled to import food, medicine, and other essentials. Supermarket shelves emptied, pharmacies ran out of supplies, and long lines for basic goods became a daily reality for millions of Venezuelans. At the same time, years of government mismanagement and corruption had already weakened the economy. Sanctions poured fuel on the fire, triggering runaway inflation. The value of the Venezuelan bolivar collapsed, wiping out people's savings and making everyday purchases unaffordable for most families. Supporters of sanctions argue they were a necessary tool to pressure a corrupt and authoritarian regime, hoping to force political change and restore democracy. They point to human rights abuses and the erosion of democratic institutions as justification for these tough measures. Critics, however, say sanctions have mostly hurt ordinary Venezuelans, deepening poverty and suffering while failing to dislodge Maduro from power for years. Humanitarian groups warn that sanctions have made it harder to deliver aid and have worsened the country's humanitarian crisis. Over the years, sanctions have become a defining feature of Venezuela's crisis, shaping everything from daily life to international relations. The debate over their effectiveness and morality continues to divide Venezuelans and the world. Now, with Maduro gone, the question of what happens to these sanctions is central to Venezuela's future. Will lifting them help the country recover, or will their legacy continue to haunt Venezuelans for years to come? As Venezuela enters a new chapter, the debate over the impact and removal of sanctions is just beginning, and the world is watching closely to see what comes next. With Maduro in custody, the world faces a crucial question. Should sanctions be lifted? Many urge caution. Maduro's power structure remains, and lifting sanctions too soon could empower corrupt actors. Experts argue for a gradual conditional approach, tie relief to real democratic reforms, like free elections and judicial independence. The goal is to incentivize change, not just remove pressure. Balancing urgent humanitarian needs with the risk of backsliding is a delicate task. The decisions made now will shape Venezuela's future, either toward democracy or renewed authoritarianism. The world must proceed carefully. Venezuela once thrived on its vast oil reserves, earning the nickname the Saudi Arabia of South America. For decades, oil was the lifeblood of the nation's economy, fueling prosperity and funding ambitious social programs. The country's black gold brought in billions of dollars, transforming Caracas into a bustling metropolis and making Venezuela one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America. Oil exports accounted for nearly all of the nation's foreign income, and the industry provided jobs for millions of Venezuelans. But years of corruption, mismanagement, and political interference slowly crippled the industry. Instead of reinvesting profits into infrastructure and technology, much of the wealth was siphoned off by officials and insiders. Maintenance was neglected, and vital equipment fell into disrepair. As the government tightened its grip, technical experts were pushed out, replaced by political loyalists with little experience in the oil business. PDVSA, the state oil company once admired across the globe, became a shadow of its former self. Offices emptied, facilities deteriorated, and the company's reputation plummeted. The loss of skilled workers and the absence of proper management led to frequent accidents and declining output. Billions of dollars vanished through corruption schemes, leaving the country's finances in tatters. The bolivar, once relatively stable, collapsed under the weight of economic mismanagement and rampant inflation. Ordinary Venezuelans felt the impact as public services deteriorated and poverty soared. International sanctions delivered a final devastating blow. These measures cut Venezuela off from vital markets and technology, making it nearly impossible to maintain or upgrade aging infrastructure. Oil tankers sat idle at ports, and export terminals were blocked, further strangling the industry. Oil production, once over 3 million barrels a day, plummeted to a fraction of that. Refineries slowed to a crawl, and many pumps were simply shut down. The country's main source of revenue all but dried up, deepening the economic crisis. Now, reviving the sector will require not just massive investment, but also a complete overhaul of management and a return to political stability. International partners and technical experts must be brought back to restore what's been lost. Experts warn that repairing the damage will take years, if not decades, and will cost billions of dollars. Investors remain wary, and the scale of the challenge is daunting. Attracting foreign oil companies depends on lifting sanctions, restoring trust, and creating a stable business environment. Only then can Venezuela hope to rebuild its oil industry and reclaim its place on the world stage. Venezuela's recovery hinges on resurrecting its crippled oil giant, a task that will test the nation's resolve and shape its future for generations to come. Venezuela's economic collapse is staggering. The country's GDP has shrunk to a fraction of its former size, and its debt is nearly double its economic output. Defaulting on foreign debt has cut Venezuela off from global lending. Oil production, once a source of national wealth, has collapsed, starving the country of foreign currency. Hyperinflation destroyed savings and livelihoods, while public services crumbled. Over 7 million Venezuelans have fled, creating a massive refugee crisis. These numbers reflect the real suffering of millions. Rebuilding will be a monumental task. Venezuela's recovery depends on foreign investment, especially in oil. Years of nationalizations and broken contracts have destroyed investor confidence. The new government must create a stable legal framework to attract capital. The oil infrastructure is in ruins, requiring billions to repair. The country also faces a severe brain drain. Skilled workers have fled. Rebuilding will require not just money, but also talent and trust. Investors need assurance their assets are safe, and contracts will be honored. Restoring faith in Venezuela as a place to do business is essential. Venezuela's path to recovery is blocked by massive debt and legal disputes. The country owes over $150 billion to a web of creditors, bondholders, expropriated companies, and foreign governments. Resolving these claims will require complex negotiations and debt restructuring. Ongoing lawsuits threaten assets abroad, like Citgo, and deter new investment. The transitional government must assemble expert teams to manage these challenges. Transparency and good faith are vital to rebuild trust with the global financial community. Clearing these hurdles is essential for sustainable recovery. Maduro's capture brings hope to millions who have endured years of hardship. A stable, democratic government could unlock recovery and allow the gradual lifting of sanctions. Reviving the oil industry and attracting investment could restore jobs, services, and dignity. But the road ahead is long. Political divisions, economic ruin, and corruption remain. Ordinary Venezuelans must be patient as change will be slow. The international community can help, but true rebuilding must come from within. For the first time in years, there is real optimism. The world watches, hoping Venezuela can finally begin to heal.